3 daughters and not a single son? What a waste of space. What's the point of supporting defective goods that can't produce a male heir?
My ex-husband sneered these words at my new husband.
You'll never know the joy of having a son.
My husband looked at my ex with a puzzled expression.
A defective product because she can't give birth to a boy? What are you talking about?
My name is Cherie. Until I turned 29, I lived with my in-laws, who owned a generations-old stationery store beloved by the community. Kids in the neighborhood always buy their school supplies here. Last year, my father-in-law Jonas decided to pass the store on to his son David.
My eyesight's getting bad,
Jonas said, placing his hand on David's shoulder. David sighed heavily, looking at me without responding to Jonas.
Make sure the store doesn't end with me, Cherie.
Here we go again. David has been pressuring me like this ever since we started dating. He always wanted a son, and after we got married, his tone and attitude became increasingly harsh. His mother, Annie, and even Jonas, who tries to be understanding, want a grandson. I had 2 sons right after getting married. You and your sister are both girls. Maybe it's genetic, Annie said.
Well, let's hope for a boy next time,
Jonas added.
You wouldn't understand. Being a regular office worker's daughter, in our family, the eldest son has always taken over the business. Your job is to give birth to the next heir,
David said. No one in the family ever stood up to David. I had a 3rd child, hoping that maybe this time it would be a boy and David would change. But yet again, it was a girl.
3 daughters. What a waste.
Even looking at our newborn daughter, David didn't change his stance that anything other than a son was worthless. When our 3rd daughter turned 3, we got news from my in-laws, who were at the hospital, that my brother-in-law and his wife had a son. David kicked a chair and yelled at me before even considering congratulations.
A son? Right from the start? Not like some useless woman who can't give birth to an heir. A wife like that is no different from a scam.
David never laid a hand on me, but his sudden outbursts about having children were something I could never get used to. After berating me endlessly, David simply said, "Dinner," and stormed out of the room. Up to this point, I had been absorbing his anger and hadn't even gone shopping yet. Feeling tears well up, whether from frustration or sadness, I grabbed my wallet and hurried to the store. Once alone, I felt a bit calmer. When I returned, David's car, which had been there earlier, was gone. Did he really go out after telling me to prepare dinner? I was angry, but at least I wouldn't have to face any blame about the kids if I didn't see him. In the quiet house, with our daughters also gone, I waited alone for everyone to return. Then, a call came in from my parents' home. It was my mom asking, "David suddenly showed up and left the girls here. What's going on?" The girls? I told her I didn't know what was happening either and asked her to watch the kids for a bit before hanging up. I tried to reach David to get his side of the story, but got no response. After several attempts, I was about to leave for my parents' house when David's car pulled up. I rushed over to him. "David, Mom just called and said you left the girls with her."
"Yeah, it's hard to manage all 3, so I dropped them off."
"What?"
"You're not needed anymore. Go back to your parents' house. We're getting a divorce."
David pulled out divorce papers from his bag, held them up in front of me, and added,
"Sign these."
"A divorce?"
There's no point in supporting a defective woman who can't give birth to a boy.
Faced with the sudden word divorce from David, I felt a sense of relief. Maybe divorce was the answer all along. I returned to my parents' home and worked hard every day to raise my daughters. David did send child support every month, but he had no interest in his daughters, who couldn't be his successors. Moreover, the girls, who had never been close to David, had no desire to see him after the divorce. 3 years after the divorce, I met my current husband, Frederick, a doctor, and we got married. He treats my 3 daughters as if they were his own, and we have a good family relationship. One day while shopping with my husband, I ran into David. Our eyes met, and there was no chance to escape as he quickly approached.
Long time no see. So this is your new husband.
This was the first time I had spoken to David since informing him that I no longer needed child support due to my remarriage. I was a bit nervous about what he might say.
I've remarried too. This is my current wife, Elise.
As David introduced the woman next to him, she shifted the baby boy she was holding, as if to show him off. David looked satisfied and turned to my husband with a condescending smile.
You'll never hold a son in your arms. She's defective. She can only give birth to girls.
My husband looked puzzled.
Don't you know?
He looked at me and smiled.
The gender of a baby is determined by the genetic information in the sperm. So if you really want to blame someone for only having daughters, it would be the father.
David seemed offended by my husband's retort and raised his voice, even though we were in public.
That's nonsense. She's useless because she can only give birth to girls. Wow, people still believe that myth? There's no scientific basis for that.
Annoyed that my husband dismissed his belief as a myth, David snapped.
Who do you think you are? I'm a doctor. Probably know a bit more about this than you do.
David seemed surprised by this and muttered some curses.
I don't care if you're a doctor. She gave birth to 3 girls and I left her. If you want a son as an heir, think twice.
Just then, our daughters returned from buying drinks. Mom, is Strawberry okay? My eldest and second daughters, each holding drinks, were followed by our youngest, who was holding the hand of a little boy. David's eyes widened in surprise. He's our son. Doesn't he look just like my husband?
Your son?
Realizing that I, whom he'd mocked for only giving birth to girls, had a son, David was speechless. He took his new wife's hand and left. My 2 older daughters, who remembered the divorce drama from 5 years ago, made faces of disgust at their father. 3 months after the encounter with David, I received a call from an unknown number. I ignored it at first, but the calls kept coming. Curious, I answered on the 4th call. Hello?
Cherie, listen, I need to talk.
It was David, speaking rapidly as if in a hurry. According to the story, David had some concerns and decided to visit a hospital after encountering us. Turns out it was the same hospital where my husband works. My husband spotted David sitting in the lobby and approached him, asking if he was feeling unwell. David said he was fine, but wanted to consult a doctor about his son. I was surprised to hear this from my husband, so I asked David if he had called to tell me about it.
No, I've been deceived.
Combining what David told me over the phone with what I later heard from my husband, here's what happened. David had seen my son, who looks a lot like my husband, while out shopping. This prompted him to resolve some complicated feelings he'd been grappling with. You see, David had been bothered that his son, born to his second wife, didn't resemble him much. Despite trying to brush it off, everyone kept saying the boy looked like his mom. No one said he looked like David. So David decided he wanted a DNA test to prove his paternity and went to the hospital for that reason. At first, he just wanted to ease his mind with the test. But my husband told him,
if you're raising it with love as your son, isn't that enough?
David took this as a veiled suggestion that the test might prove the boy wasn't his, and he got angry. He declared he would definitely get the test done, only to be told,
we don't do paternity tests here.
Ignoring my husband's words, David went ahead and visited the hospital's genetics department. As expected, they couldn't help him. The doctor suggested he consult a lawyer, so he left the hospital. Later, he got the test done through a lawyer-recommended agency and found out the boy wasn't his biological son.
When I confronted her, she admitted she cheated.
David said, anger seeping through the phone. But honestly, I had nothing to say. I don't know if he just wanted someone to listen or thought I'd sympathize, but the call was unnecessary. So what do you want from me? I'm not interested in your life anymore, so stop contacting me, I said, ignoring his desperate tone. I hung up and blocked his number. But just when I thought peace had returned to our home, a new problem arose. David's ex-wife, who had been divorced and sought compensation, started pestering my husband for a dinner date. She had learned about my husband's workplace from David, checked every doctor's profile on the hospital's website, and finally identified my husband and his department from the posted photos. She then reached out on social media, trying to impress him with her achievements and inviting him to dinner, only to be firmly turned down. Despite being turned down, this woman was relentless. She even tried to ambush my husband as he left the hospital and made unnecessary appointments, raising alarms among the hospital staff. Eventually, my husband decided to talk to her directly to put an end to the inconvenience she was causing. As always, he caught her loitering around the hospital and told her off. Please stop following me. I have no interest in dining with you or being friends. She got red in the face, badmouthed me, his wife, and stormed off. I don't remember the details, my husband said. It was embarrassing. Everyone was watching. 4 days after hearing this from my husband, our doorbell rang incessantly. On the monitor was a woman who appeared to be David's ex-wife. I wondered why she was at our house, but with the lights on, pretending to be out was not an option. I asked my eldest daughter and second daughter to take the younger kids upstairs. Then I opened the door with the chain still on. The woman smirked as she glanced at the chain. Surprisingly, she seemed calm and called out to him without even trying to hide her hostility. Sorry to bother you. It's such a busy time, Super Mom. What do you want? I asked curtly, and she snorted. You're not very friendly, are you? Let's get to the point. You should leave your doctor husband. Cherry, was it? A woman like you, who can't even cook and has a bunch of stepchildren, doesn't deserve a doctor. Know your place. I had never discussed my cooking skills with this stranger, but she must have heard something from David. Why are you here telling me to divorce my husband? I won't divorce him, and it's none of your business. I tried to close the door, but she raised her voice. Don't you get it? The reason David left you is because I suggested it. I froze, and she retracted her foot from the doorway, laughing. That was close. Almost got my foot caught. What are you talking about? Ignoring her flippancy, she sneered. I was dating David at the time. He's the eldest son of a historic shop, you know. So I advised him to divorce you since you can only give birth to daughters and can't produce a male heir. I had no idea, so it wasn't a fair. Well, it turned out for the best. Now you know you can have a son. But the stationery shop doesn't make as much as I thought, so I'll give David back to you, and you give me your current husband. She spoke as if she had already won, looking down on me with a smug expression. As I was lost in thought, she said in a low voice, If you get it, then divorce him already, and left. I was shocked by this unexpected revelation, but I felt no pain as my love for David had already faded. Still, I wanted to put an end to her stalking my husband. Before opening the door, I had set my phone to record, just in case. The audio was clearer than expected, and I decided to fight to protect my husband and children. Later, I used the recording as evidence to demand compensation from David and his ex-wife. She was reluctant to pay, saying I had also remarried, but I sent detailed documents to her parents prepared by a lawyer based on information from David. David also had resentments towards his ex-wife, so things moved smoothly. I don't know if he's remorseful, but he has already paid the compensation in full. On the other hand, her parents were furious when they learned about their daughter's actions. They summoned her and her child to their home and promised to make payments to me. She couldn't pay it all at once since she also owed David, but she's making monthly payments.
It's funny to talk about a successor when we don't even know if they want to take over. And the idea that only a boy can inherit is strange. What kind of business can only be passed to a man?
My husband, who has no plans to open his own practice, spoke in a relaxed tone. We hope our children find what they want to do in life. We don't worry about whether they're boys or girls. Our family here and now is what matters most, and so we continue to live happily.